This is how we've been doing it. All right, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on again. like what's the old saying? You learn a lot more from your losers than you do winners. And unfortunately, the last 6 7 years, South Florida's had a rough run at it, right? Through poor management, poor administration hires, things like that. But um, like I said, through all those losses and that and down seasons, obviously I learned a lot because then you start paying attention to why things aren't working right behind the scenes, whether it's coaching, whether it's schemes, whether it's play calling, whether it's matchups, whether it's depth issues, things like that. So it makes you a better college football, not just fan, but also understanding the why behind why a team's bad and why a program's bad. So, I think that translates well over into looking at regular season wins and losses here. The one thing I will tell you with the Big Ten is I'm a big, huge fan of it. However, don't have a specific favorite team, so there's no bias cake baked into the cake, as they say. So all the predictions and everything that I tell you tonight about the Big Ten uh, come from no selective enforcement, as they say. So with that being said, take it away, Josh. I think they're close to that now, but out of that, they'll be pretty even par with the revenue sharing. However, the separation is going to be um, the NIL moving in house, and as you saw today with certain teams like Tennessee, they're when they're signing new deals with Adidas or Nike, they're working into those contracts, marketing and advertising for extra NIL revenue towards specific players that they need. So now they can go above and beyond that, that 20.5 million revenue annual sharing. And that is where the Big Ten is really going to, along with the SEC, is really going to separate themselves in the coming years with roster management running it like minor league NFL. Well, hey guys, pretty simple. Um, Vegas has them the over under 10.5. Um, I have them. They're going to win 11 games. You look at their lineup. They have everybody back for the most part. They're loaded at running back. They have a senior veteran quarterback in the second year of the offensive system. He had really decent numbers last year, threw for over 3,300 yards. Where it gets interesting this year is they have a guy, Jackson Smolik, who is actually probably the best athlete out of all the QBs, and they'll have some run game packages for him, like Wildcat. And you throw in the fact that their offensive line is loaded, and they already have two great running backs. Now they're gonna incorporate a running quarterback who those running backs can then block for in that line. So it's going to make it really hard to game plan for them. Defensively, they're loaded. Um, I do have them over the 10.5. I have them at 11 wins for the year and in the playoff. Um, let's talk about their season last year, right? So you mentioned about James Franklin, and he just can't win the big game. Well, here's the thing: they did beat a Boise State team that outside of Ashton Gentry. I guess they didn't play great defense. Offensively, it was better because they had a first round generational player behind in the backfield, so that helps. But they still dominated Boise State. Um, they beat a really good SMU team. People forget, SMU won the ACC last year, and they were a good team, right? So the thing with James Franklin is he's now finally getting offensive coordinators and coordinators in general, and the defensive coordinator, and those guys will make him better. He has all the resources at Penn State that are going to help him. But if you look last year, they only had you made a comment about they don't lose to lesser talent. Well, they only had three games last year that was a one-score game. The second week of the season, when they played Bowling Green, they won by only a touchdown. However, it was early in the season, so it takes a little bit. And then USC and Ohio State were the only other two one-score games. USC they squeaked out an overtime win, and Ohio State they only lost by a touchdown. And if you remember that game, it was close. Penn State had a chance to take the lead late in the game, and they blew it unfortunately. But again, we're just talking over under. I've got them win at least 11 games this year, and I feel very comfortable with that pick. Over the 10.5 for Penn State this year. They're gonna beat Oregon. They're gonna beat Oregon, and I'll get into why when we get to Oregon. Nope. I feel comfortable saying they're going to get to 11 wins this year. Obviously, they got to stay healthy, but if they stay healthy, I see them getting 11 wins. I look at their schedule. Not horrible. I believe they don't play Michigan this year in the regular season. That's going to help them. Michigan's a really good defensive team, and they're going to be improved from last year. So I think some of the other schools like Ohio State and Oregon aren't going to be as good. And I'll get into the reasons why. So I actually think it's a favorable schedule for Penn State to get to 11 wins this year. Obviously, I have them having a couple losses because it is the Big Ten, and every week they're playing tough teams. But I think 11 is definitely doable, especially since what they did last year. You're talking about Ohio State. All right, so I'll use this analogy, right? In baseball, pitching and defense wins championships. Football, defense wins championships, but instead of pitching, it's quarterbacking, right? So without a quarterback, you don't have pitching, as they say, right? And then you end up somewhere in the middle of the pack, maybe decent if you play some teams because you just out athlete them, right? So the concern I have with Ohio State is they're breaking in a new quarterback, and they're not as good on the offensive line. Um, they're still Ohio State. They're still going to win games, right? But Vegas is asking, are they going to win over 10 games, or are they going to win under 10 games? I think a smart person using what we talk about fundamental analysis, you're gonna take the under on this one, right? Will they win 8, 9, 10 games? Probably. Yeah. I mean, I feel very comfortable saying that. I don't think they win 11. The other concern, and keep this in mind, right? So most people have penciled in as their starter is this guy. Let me make sure I say his name right. Uh, it is Julian. insane, right? He was originally from Alabama. The concern that I have with him is he lost his black stripe last year early in the season. And for those that don't know what black stripe is, Ohio State, a football player loses his black stripe when the coaching staff deems he has demonstrated sufficient commitment, hard work, and talent to be considered a full-fledged member of the team. The black stripe placed on the helmet of the new player symbolizes that they haven't yet earned the full rights and responsibilities of a Buckeye. It's a tradition started by Urban Meyer. So, um, so long story short is they put him in the game early and they took away his black stripe because they thought he was ready to play. Um, but long story short, he obviously didn't. Right, he was staying in the backup. Now they think he can match last year's numbers, but as I said earlier, they lost. They've lost a lot of talent on the offensive line. Um, you know, they do have a laden group at running back, but again, if you don't have an offensive line that has, they lost three starters, I believe. So they're going to have to replace those guys. Yes, they've got veterans in the back that'll step up, but it's definitely going to be a drop down. And when you're trying to get a new quarterback situated, especially early in the season, there's going to be some hiccups because it can take 3 to 4 weeks for the offense to get figured out. Your biggest improvement is going to be from week 1 to week 2. Again, they got Texas week 1. That's a loss. They do have teams. They do have Penn State at home, but again, this is more of a rebuilding slash reloading year. So again, I feel comfortable taking the under. I think they finished with 9 or 10 wins, which is still a really good season for where they were last year. Well, again, looking at Vegas, they got the over under 10.5. They're bringing in a brand new young freshman quarterback. Their weakness on defense is going to be their defensive back. So against good throwing teams, they're going to have problems because they lost, I believe, all four starters. But again, my concern is the quarterback. When you're breaking in a brand new, not just a brand new quarterback, but breaking in a freshman, they're going to make mistakes. And the reality is, what Vegas is asking is, do you think they win 11 games or more, or do they win 10 games or less? I think with a brand new quarterback that's a freshman, that's new, I think I would take the under on Oregon for the year just because he's going to make mistakes, especially as some of the games get tight. And the one thing about the Big Ten is a lot of those games are tight, especially in the second half because those teams play defense and run the ball, clock control. And unfortunately, you just need experience in the Big Ten to really, have a stellar year as a quarterback. So I'm taking the under for Oregon in 2025. I'm taking 10 wins or less for Oregon. Who? Which one? What position does he play? Well, it'll be yeah, that's what I said. They're in a quarterback battle. Said uh, so let's see. So so Achilles Smith, it the name helps when you're being to get you on the radar in high school. So recruitment purposes, it gets you in the door. It allows teams to start evaluate you and not overlook you. So that helps, right? So they and some teams will take a flyer on you because they know they believe there might be potential there because of your father. So I believe Moore is the front runner to win the job this fall, mainly because he has experience from last year. Not a whole lot, but he does have some experience. So there is an open competition, but I believe Moore is leading it right now. With this number two guy is Austin Novosad. But however, Achilles Smith or Luke Moga could move up to the number two spot if they have a really good fall camp. Um, but if I was a betting man and I wanted 80%, certainty, I would take Moore as the opening day starter for week one for Oregon. Now, and when I say that, the caveat too is sometimes coaches are always evaluating film week to week, right? And they're evaluating practice. So just because of if Moore starts at the beginning of the year, that doesn't mean he's going to finish the year as the starter, right? Sometimes players are really good; they just need, 4 to 6 weeks to get acclimated, and then the coach is like, or an injury happens, guy steps in, and he never relinquishes the spot again. So we'll find out. At the end of the day, the one thing about Lanning, though, is he can win the big game, but his teams tend to play down to the competition week to week. So if they play a crappy team or a team that's not very good, it's hard for them to get hyped and ready for it. And then you'll see those games are a lot closer than they should be. And again, because of that, Vegas, if I'm taking the under. They got unproven quarterbacks, guys that are going to take some time. They got a decent schedule. They're now in the Big Ten. I think they take a step back this year. I take the under 10. I think it's a very, very comfortable bet for me. have them slightly better than Ohio State, especially defensively. Um, but again, they they're rebuilding on the defensive line. Um, they have a really good linebacker core, and they have a good defensive back. So um, when you look at that, they do have a true freshman, and they also got Mikey Keene from Fresno. So I believe Mikey Keene will be fine. Vegas has got the over under of 8.5. I have them going 8 wins again this year. Again, they don't have Jim Harbaugh as their coach. Uh, Sharon Moore is a defensive guy. They're going to play really hard defense and they're going to run the ball. But even if he has a better quarterback, they're not a pass happy team. So I feel comfortable taking the under with them, but just under at 8 wins again. I think they go 8-5 or 9-4 with the bowl win, but I think they finish 8-4 for the regular season. I think that's fair. So you got to understand a little bit how Malima works. He's not going to blow teams out. They're gonna control the offensive line of scrimmage. They're gonna run the crap out of the ball and maintain. Their goal is to win possession, time of possession. One of the concerns I had is um, they went 10-3 last year. So they had a pretty good record on paper. However, five of those games were one score games. So that's a concerning because that means those five could have gone either way depending if the ball bounces a certain way, right? So then all of a sudden, instead of 10-3, let's say worst case you lose all five. Well, now you're at 500 for the year, right? If you win three of those five again, because again, every year is different. You win three of those five, you're at 8 wins, right? So for Vegas for this year, they have over under 7.5. Um, they do have a really good quarterback coming back, at least conference wise, and they have all five starters back on the offensive line. Really, really important, right? Um, and they're loaded at running back, so they are gonna this year again control the clock. Their quarterback's going to be pretty good, and they play really good defense, right? They have a better defensive line this year, and that's really important. And their linebackers are loaded. According to Belima, he actually said it's his best one that he's had in the 5 years he's been there. So I'm taking the over just on the fact that they got two really good lines. They got a seasoned quarterback. They're loaded at running back, and it fits right into what he wants to do. So I have them winning over eight or more games for the year. I think that's a pretty good bet right there based on the lines and quarterback position. Because if you have a quarterback, it's like I said, what did I say earlier? Pitching and defense, right? Quarterbacking and defense. They have a defense and they got a quarterback, right? So you're going to win some ball games. So again, I think taking the over 7.5 for the year for regular season wins is a really good bet. It's over under 7.5. And you think back to his time at Wisconsin too, like They were consistent 8, 9 wins. Once he got rolling, they were consistent in 8, 9 wins every year. They don't play. They again, they're another one of those teams. They play down to talent, so they struggled against Purdue last year. They struggled against South Carolina. Not to say South Carolina was bad, but it wasn't. They weren't that good. So especially towards the end of the season, we learned a lot about South Carolina. So again, I take the over. I got them 8 or more wins, but how many more after that, I'm not quite sure. But like I said, we're talking about what Vegas thinks and what you're trying to take. So I'm taking the over. I'm taking 8 or more wins for them. Well, kind of like you said, they had a really favorable schedule to start the year last year, right? So I think they finished, they were 10-0. Um, they do have a quarterback. They got running backs. They're replacing a couple guys on the lines. But if you look at their schedule, I mean, they're going to be 3-0 going into the fourth week of the season. So there's 3 wins right there. They got to play Illinois. They got them at home. I think Illinois beats them though. Then they got to go on the road against Iowa. Um, Iowa's tough at home. If it was in Indiana, I would have Indiana. But okay, let's just say Iowa's lost number 2. Then you got to go. Then you get a bye, but then you got to go on the road against Oregon. Tough place to play. Then you're at home versus Michigan State. Then you're at home versus UCLA. And we keep this in mind: UCLA is going to be very, very good at quarterback. For those that followed the debacle last year with Nico from leaving Tennessee. He wanted a certain amount of money. He thought he was going to get it. They bluffed him, and he ended up getting screwed. He went to UCLA, and now he makes like 900 grand a year. However, he's worth way more than that. It just worked out for UCLA. They got a stud. So UCLA is gonna have an offense. Um, their defense will be trash, but if they score enough, they could beat some teams. At Maryland will be the win. At Penn State's a loss. Wisconsin is an interesting one. I have them winning, and Purdue, you never really know. But Vegas is saying over under 8.5 this year. So I have them winning 9 games. So I'm taking the over and a half. Again, it's a slight drop off from last year, but I still have them getting the 9 wins. Yeah. Um, so let's talk about USC. Regards to Lincoln Riley has had at defensive coordinator, they're usually not the greatest defensively. They're more focused on offense. Teams tend to take on the personality of their coach. If he's an offensive guy, they tend to score a lot of points, and defense is just trying to survive, right? So, or vice versa. However, they were 7-6 last year, I believe. Vegas is asking if you're taking the over under of 7.5. They're the second easiest schedule in the Big Ten this year. So I think they get to 8 wins. They do have to break in a new quarterback, but that's Riley's forte, and he'll find somebody that's serviceable. They're loaded at the running back. They're actually really good at the wide receivers, um, and they do have a pretty good offensive line. Defensively, they've bought some guys, um, and linebackers is their weakness on defense this year, or at least their question mark going into the season. Um, they should be either the same or a little slightly better at defensive back. But again, we're talking about over under 7.5, second easiest schedule in the Big Ten. And Riley's starting to get his feet in just in the last year or so with recruiting. The money's been pouring in, stuff like that. So they're getting the right guys, especially in the portal. So again, they'll have one of the better defensive lines in all of football this year. So I have them getting 8 wins. So all right. So when it comes to that, to the air raid, right? So there's a couple rules of thought with that. Number one, if you're going to have that kind of offense, uh, there's a couple things you have to have on defense. One, you have to have depth, right? So if you don't have depth, let's just say you got 16 guys that can play on the defense side of the ball, but you go against a team like Alabama that has 28 guys, right? Well, come by the fourth quarter, that's going to be a huge difference as far as whether those guys are gassed or not, right? So depth is number one. That's how you maintain a decent defense with an air raid offense. Two, they're going to see that offense in fall camp. So if you're not conditioned for that going into the season, then the strength and conditioning coach one has failed, and the coaching staff has failed the team because they have not prepared them. Because if that's what you're seeing every week and you're out of shape by week one, conditioning starts in January. So, uh, you know, what I've noticed is when a defense struggles because they have an air raid offense on the offensive side of the ball, they struggle because of lack of conditioning, they struggle because of depth, or number three, the defensive coordinator is fine at a putting together a game plan to start the game, but the moment he goes against an offensive coordinator that can call audibles, make real-time adjustments on the fly, whatever, they struggle defensively if the defensive coordinator can't make in-game adjustments as well. So it's more of a personality issue and a depth issue when it really comes down to it. And again, strength and conditioning. So remember, strength and conditioning starts in January. You got to have that, right? Because you're going to be on you're going to be on the field, 40 to 40-ish minutes a game easily. Um, you got to have a defensive coordinator that can in-game management make decisions on the fly in the game, right? Make adjustments. And three, you got to have depth. So looking at that, those are the three things you think. If you have all three of those, then you're going to be fine. Again, you're still going to give up points as a defense, but you should be able to at least keep them to the point where your offense is scoring more than you're giving up. historically, Matt's teams get better every year. Vegas has the over under at 7.5. I have them over 7.5 wins for the year. Their quarterback should be better this year. People forget they won 7 games last year with a banged up offensive line all season. Um, they got them all coming back this year. Um, you know, for a ton of career starts. So as long as they stay healthy, their offensive line is going to be nasty. And they lost some parts on the defensive side of things, but that's Matt Rule's bread and butter, and he always has solid defenses. He just plugs and chugs, replaces guys left and right. There's not really whole lot of drop off. Um, so again, if we're talking over under 7.5, I've got them over 7.5. Their schedule's not too hard. As far as it's more favorable for them. I don't know how many more they'll win than 8, but I could see 8 being a realistic number this year uh, for Rutgers. So I'm taking the over 7.5 wins for the year for Rutgers. I agree. I agree. Listen, don't be surprised if Nebraska upsets Michigan this year. Don't be surprised. Well, the difference with Matt Rule in college, he's won in places that reality is you have no business winning. Nobody should go to Temple and win. Nobody should go, to Baylor and win. No offense to their fans, but those are just not attractive places for recruits to go, right? It's also some of them are in the middle of nowhere. Like, you know, um, Philadelphia doesn't have loads of. I'm more balanced. I mean, look, I got nothing against the Baylor or the Temple fans. I'm just saying he's won at places that are traditionally harder to win at, and he's in Nebraska now, another place. Again, I don't expect him to win 11 games, but I expect him to improve from last year. All right, so when we talk about watching every USF game, that was 2016, and that was in Temple. And the year before, if you remember, we upset them to go to 5 wins. We were 4-6 when they came to town. We ended up winning 5-6. It was our first top 25 victory in years. Um, and we had Marlon Mack and Quentin Flowers, and we were just a better team. You knew right away. That game in 2016 actually cost South Florida the ability to play and possibly win the American Conference that year. That was the year that they should have won it that year. There was a couple bad calls late in that game in Temple that, according to the replays, should have been called the other way. Um, I use my eyes, not my emotions. Even as a USF fan, I try to stay, even keel with that. But I mean, as a coach's son, there were blatant missed calls, and it cost South Florida the game late in the game in Temple, and ultimately cost them the championship in Willie Taggart's final year there. So, yeah, I mean, it was one of the heartbreakers, and South Florida was loaded talent, NFL talent wise, up and down the field on both sides. Um, Unfortunately, the year before they had a better defense. They didn't get hot till they upset Syracuse earlier and midway through the year, and then they took off. And people forget they won 8 of their last 9 games. They were shutting teams out. They were blowing teams out by 40 something points a game. They were a really good team. They just didn't get. They had some bad bounces go that way against Temple. But what I will tell you about Temple is he's not going to have his quarterbacks do too much. So Iola, some people say, oh, he may have a better year as far as numbers. I don't know. But he expects his quarterback to have game management, control the clock, pound the rock, and let your defense win the championship, right? Like that's Matt Rule, just like get the ball back. So Nebraska is going to play really hard-nosed defense. They're not going to take plays off. They're going to be fundamentally sound. They're going to make right. They're going to be assignment sound. So you're going to have to beat them. And their quarterback is going to be smart with the ball, and they're going to try to run it and and use their line and win the time of possession. So team like a Michigan that plays well to their thing because Michigan tries to play the same way. So that'll be really interesting for them. But again, I'm taking over the 7.5. I would I would agree with that, but not right away. It takes 3 to 5 years to transition to a big time conference like that. So 5 years down the road, I would expect it. Well, the Vegas has got them, like you said, over under 7.5. People have made a lot of money taking the under with them. They have a really tough schedule. They got 5 hard road games in the Big Ten. The ones they do have at home, they got big teams coming in. I'm taking the under 7.5 for the year. They're supposed to be better at quarterback, but the weakness of the defense is linebackers, so they're going to struggle. Um, against offenses that can throw the mid pass. If the running backs get past the defense line, it's going to be a problem. So I think they won. Was it 7, 8 games last year? Let's see. Yeah, they won 8 games, but again, I have them. I'm taking the under 7.5. I mean, pretty straightforward. Just a tough schedule, and they just NIL wise, they just don't have the horses. Look, PJ Fleck has been proven he does more with less than probably any other coach in the Big Ten, right? They won 8 games last year. Vegas has got the over under 7.5. I got them winning 8 games again this year. They're going to be pretty solid. They've done well with recruiting. They've done well in the transfer portal. So I think, like I said, I think they get back to 8 wins again this year. Um, let's see, and I think he just, like I said, PJ Fleck is um, they're going to have a lot of tight games. There's going to have a lot of one-score games they're going to win. But I think their schedule's favorable enough they can get to 8 wins throughout the year. And he is pretty high on some of the positions. Um, but again, he does in more with less. So I'm taking the over 7.5. I think 8 is a fair number. I think they're going to be improved this year. Vegas has the over under at 7.5. They were 6-7 last year. I'm still taking the under at 7.5. I have them getting to 7 wins and flipping it instead of 6-7. I think they're going to finish 7-6. I just think their schedule's too tough. Um, you know, uh, they're they could start 3-0. However, then they got Ohio State. Then they got to go to Maryland. Maryland could be a win. Rutgers is going to be really tough. At Michigan. Then they got to play Illinois the week after that. That's tough. Then they go at Wisconsin. Um, you know, Purdue should be a win. Then they got to go at UCLA. Have UCLA beating that. Oregon, they've got home, but Oregon's going to be really good. Um, and just looking at the schedule, I could see 7 wins, but so I'm taking the under for them, just barely. Washington State is horrible. I don't buy any of that nonsense. Washington will win that game against Washington State. Um, yeah, yeah, I agree. second here. I'm looking. So I think their schedule is tough. I mean that's the reality. The schedule's tough. Vegas has the over under at 5.5. They were 5-7 last year. I'm actually taking the under. The problem with Fickle is, yeah, he did bring in new coordinators because um, you can't. He's trying to throw the ball in the Big Ten, and it really the teams that win in the Big Ten run the crap out of the ball, and and whatnot. So that kind of offense doesn't work real well. Again, new coordinators, really tough schedule, and they think they're high on their quarterback, but we'll see how he does. He did have some pretty decent numbers, obviously, from last year, um, but again, he's there's tape on him now. He played at San Diego State. They keep people think they'll have 1,000 yard running back this year, but nobody knows who that is because they lost their top guy, right? So those are problems. Offensive line should be fine. Again, they're going to be a good defensive team, but I'm just not sold on their offense. I think they win 5 games again this year. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Rutgers, and you hit on a lot of points. Shiano's a defensive minded coach. They're going to be in every game. They're going to play tough. This is his best team he's had in 3 years, right? So they were 7-6 last year. Um, Now I don't know if that translates to 8 or 9 wins. However, Vegas right now has them over under 5.5. I feel comfortable taking them over at least 6 wins this year. They do have a tough schedule, but at the same time, there's enough to get 6 or 7 wins on that schedule too, especially right out the gate. They're 100% going to be 3-0 when they get to week 4, right? 3-0, which means they got to find 3 out of the next 9 games. They got to win, right? So, well, that's what I'm saying. Vegas is saying they're not going to win 6 games this year. So I'm going to tell you right now, they've got to win one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Yeah, they only got to win 3 of the final 9 games to get 6 wins. I see them doing that, right? They can go 3-6 and beat the over for Vegas. So I think that to me that's a comfortable pick again, and it's Rutgers' best team he's had talent wise underneath them. So they're going to be defensively. What? Well, and again, they've recruited well. Since he's gotten there, they've recruited well. They're getting guys that fit their scheme, and they've gotten guys that fit what they're trying to do. So they have some depth. Again, this is the best team he's had. It's year 3. Teams tend to take a really nice step in year 3, right? Across the board. So again, if we're talking over and under, I got him over with 6 wins or more this year. Possibly, but we'll see. Again, the key number is, can they win 3 of their last 9 games? I think they can. Well, that's what I mean. So if we're talking over under 5.5. That's one that you put a bet on. That's one where I feel comfortable saying taking the over. Remember, Saban was there too. He didn't do so bad. Yeah, they didn't have the resources at the time. and they were not. Their issue too is their admin has never really been super aligned with them. Yeah. Well, well, I mean, looking at it, Vegas has them under over 5.5. Looking at their schedule, they're going to start out 3-0. So again, same situation as before. Can they win three of their last 9 games? Right. So I think that's realistic. I'm taking them over 5.5 for the year. It's year two; they'll be improved. Um, they're not going to win a whole lot of games, but I think they get to 6 wins. So pretty straightforward. Like I said, they've got to win three of their last nine. I think that's doable. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's over under 5.5. Um, I have concerns with UCLA's defense. Offensively, UCLA is going to be able to throw the ball. Um, but if you look at their schedule, can they get 6 wins? So we go look at it. Um, Utah is real tough. Um, UNLV, I think they win that one. A lot of people are high on UNLV, but if you look behind the peel back the numbers, UNLV is not aligned administratively from top to bottom. Um, they don't have the NIL money people think they do. Dan Mullen's there, but recruiting has not been great. So I don't think UNLV is as good. So I have them. You look at it; they're going to go 2-1 in the first ones. They do play at Northwestern. That's going to be really, really tough game. Northwestern's pretty good this year. Um, then they got Penn State, then they got at Michigan State. They got Maryland, which I have them beating Maryland, but because it's at home, then they got to go to at Indiana, Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, USC. Um, I don't have them winning more than 5 games this year, mainly because their defense is not very good, and they're going to need a defense to win a lot of these games. I think, like I said, Nico's good, but he can't do it all himself, and the other thing is, if I look at it, make sure I bring it up here. Um, they're hoping their running back unit is more productive, and they lost their top three offensive linemen. So I know Nico's having a good fall camp according to his teammates, but there's question marks in the offensive line. So if they don't protect him, it's going to be a long game. And if they're running back, if they don't protect him, that means they can't block for the running backs, and we still don't know what they have for running backs. So again, I'm taking the under 5 wins or less this year for UCLA. Well, let's start. Well, Vegas has them over under 3.5. I'm taking the over. I think they can get to 4 wins looking at their schedule. Three of them for sure. And then they're going to have an upset somewhere because that's just, it's Northwestern, right? They're going to show up one Saturday and beat a team they're not supposed to beat. Um, so this is one of their better teams they've had in the last couple of years. It's year three, so I expect them to take a little bit of a jump. They were 4-8 last year. Maybe they win more this year, but if we're talking just the over under, Vegas has them at 3.5. I'm taking the over for Northwestern. It's a doable schedule to get 4 wins. Well, okay, so they got Western Illinois one, ULM two, right? They beat Purdue last year. They're better this year than they were last year, so I'm taking Purdue number three, and they got Purdue at home. Okay, that's win number three. Then they're looking at Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, USC, um, Nebraska, Penn State. At Nebraska and Penn State, they're not winning those, but I could see them pulling an upset if they win the opening week against Tulane, which we're going to find out right out of the gate. Then they'll get the four, but um, they could pull the upset at home against Minnesota because they play better at home, right? So they and if Michigan has an off day, they could upset them. If you they got UCLA at home, there's plenty of places they can get their fourth win. So they got to get 4 wins. But if you're taking it, I feel comfortable saying they're going to win 4 games this year. Well, Vegas has the over under 4.5. I'm taking the under. I don't see them. I don't see 5 wins on their schedule. They got a tough schedule. It's not favorable, and they still have too many question marks. Like I said, recruiting wise, they haven't been. They've been okay, maybe even below average. Um, a lot of people are hoping that because they should get off to a strong start to start the season, that momentum will carry them into the season. Um, but there's a big question mark at quarterback. Um, but they do have 5 Big Ten road games. So I again, I could see them getting 4 wins, but where's win number five coming? So I'm really confused there. So I'm taking the under 4.5. All right, so I think Barry Odom's going to be a good coach in time. They went 1-11 last year, so they can only really get better unless they, Vegas has the over under 3.5. I am struggling to find 4 wins on that schedule. So I do think they win more than one game this year, but they're breaking in new quarterback or new head coach, two new coordinators. So and he's got a tremendous rebuilding. They don't have talent. Um, they have some frontline guys, but they have no depth. It's a multi-year rebuild there, unfortunately. And he doesn't have his guys in yet, so he doesn't know what he's got. Again, I'm taking the under 3.5 for the year. Again, could I see them getting 2, 3 wins? Absolutely. I think 3 wins is very realistic for them this year in year one, but I don't see them. I can't find 4 wins on their schedule, so I'm going with the under 3.5 for Vegas. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, no, it should be a good year for the Big Ten. They got a lot of really good teams. They're going to beat up on each other. And as we get into the season, the key thing for this teams is going to have to stay healthy, right? But we know several teams are going to make the playoffs in the Big Ten, so it's definitely a conference you want to follow. But there's going to be a lot of games that you can make money. Forget even the win totals. Get into the lines, right? Like the over unders and the points. Like depending on matchups, there's going to be a lot of opportunities with Big Ten games throughout the year to make some extra money outside of the win totals. Yep. Yeah.
Recording stopped.
All right. Later, man. Yep.